You reach for the can. Same spot on the shelf, third row where it sat every week of your childhood. Your hand stops halfway, hovering over empty space. Vanished. A clerk shrugs. Corporate pulled it last spring, he says, like that explains anything. No warning. Not even a chance to say goodbye. The recipe your grandmother trusted, missing between a single shopping trip and the next, and the only proof it existed is a taste you can't quite recall anymore. That's the thing about food disappearing. It doesn't announce itself with headlines or sirens. One day the aisle just looks a little different, slightly rearranged, and you don't notice the gap until it's already closed up, as though the store forgot to. Here's the flat truth. America has quietly buried dozens of pantry staples people assumed were permanent fixtures, untouchable, practically woven into the culture. Today, we're counting down 20 of them, the foods Americans figured would outlive us all. But here's where it gets strange. Several of these vanishings weren't accidents. They weren't simple business failures or shifting tastes drifting elsewhere. Some were deliberate, buried by companies that didn't want customers asking too many questions about what was really inside the can. Keep that thought close as we go, because by the end, you'll wonder how many discontinued labels were actually something else entirely, something closer to a cover story. Number 20. This one didn't fail. It got murdered by its own success. Wonder Bread's original soft white loaf wasn't just popular. It restructured how an entire country ate breakfast, sandwiches, school lunches, all of it. Then in 2012, Hostess filed for bankruptcy, and the bread that built suburban America went completely dark for 9 months. Shelves empty where it used to anchor every aisle. A buyer revived the brand eventually, relaunching the name with fanfare. But bakers who tested the new loaf against archived recipes swore something was different underneath the packaging. The air pockets sat wrong. The sweetness landed a beat too sharp. Something had shifted in the formula, quietly, permanently. The original recipe, the one 3 generations grew up trusting without question, is gone for good, replaced by an imposter still wearing its name on the wrapper. Somewhere in a sealed company archive, the real formula probably still exists on paper. Nobody's allowed to bake it again. Number 19. Picture a flavor so specific, so strangely beloved that people once drove 2 states over just to stock up before it vanished for good. Crystal Pepsi promised a clear cola, no caramel color, supposedly purer and cleaner than anything else on the shelf, riding a whole early 90s obsession with transparency in packaging. Released in 1992, pulled by 1994, barely 2 years of shelf life for a product people still talk about decades later. Sales collapsed fast because people couldn't quite trust a cola that looked like sparkling water in a bottle. PepsiCo tried reviving it twice more, once in 2015 and again in 2023, and both times it sold out within days, then quietly disappeared again without explanation. A product people keep begging for, that the company keeps testing, then keeps killing on purpose. Make of that pattern what you will. Maybe some flavors are only ever meant to exist as a memory, dragged out every decade just to remind you it's gone. Number 18. There's a brand of canned meat that built entire factory towns, fed soldiers through 2 separate wars, and then almost vanished without anyone in Washington noticing or caring, despite once being a household name on every pantry shelf in the country. Spam survived the cultural shift, but its quieter cousin, Underwood deviled ham, didn't get the same mercy from the market. Production slowed to a trickle through the 2010s, shelf space shrank store by store, and by 2023 most regional grocers had stopped restocking it entirely. No press release marked the moment, no farewell tour, no nostalgia campaign. Just an empty metal hook where the little Red Devil logo can use to hang, waiting for a delivery that stopped coming. Somewhere a factory floor that once ran around the clock sits quiet now, repurposed for something else entirely. Number 17. Some discontinuations come with a body count of furious complaints attached. This one's different, because almost nobody complained loudly enough at the time, and that silence is exactly why it disappeared so easily without a fight. Surge, the neon green citrus soda from the 90s, had a fan base loud enough to launch an actual write-in campaign decades after it vanished. But here's the twist nobody talks about. Internal Coca-Cola documents later revealed Surge wasn't pulled for poor sales alone, not really. It was quietly outperforming the company's own flagship product in certain regional markets, and flagship always wins that fight. The soda didn't lose to the open market. It lost to its own family, eliminated from the inside, written out of the company history like it embarrassed someone. Stop here for a second. Comment below with the one food from this list you'd bring back from the dead. No contest, no debate needed. We need to know which ghost you'd resurrect first, so type it now before you keep watching. Number 16. A cereal so popular it earned its own Saturday morning cartoon, its own toy line, its own small mythology among kids who never even watched the actual show. French Toast Crunch built a cult following strong enough to survive a full decade of relentless nostalgia campaigns online. General Mills discontinued it in the US in 2006, even as it kept selling perfectly fine across the border in Canada the entire time. Americans had to physically cross a border checkpoint just to buy their own childhood back in a box. It finally returned stateside in 2015, but only after enough people noticed the strange cruelty of that detail to make real noise about it publicly. 9 years is a long time to grieve a cereal, but plenty of people did exactly that. Number 15. There's a brand of fruit snack that quietly dominated lunchboxes for 2 decades straight, then evaporated so completely that an entire generation assumes they imagined the original entirely. Fruit roll-ups didn't disappear, not technically, but their original tart, almost too sour formula absolutely did. Reformulated in the early 2000s to cut citric acid content for broader appeal, the real version, the one that stung your tongue on purpose and made your eyes water a little, is gone. The wrapper still looks identical on the shelf. The product folded inside it is not, and no amount of squinting at the ingredients list will bring back that specific sting. Number 14. This next one didn't just leave the shelf quietly, it left the regional memory of an entire part of the country. A coconut marshmallow snack cake sold for decades only in Midwest markets. The kind of treat packed into school lunches and gas station bags alike quietly stopped production during Hostess's 2012 collapse and was never reintroduced outside one small Texas footprint afterward. If you grew up anywhere else in America, you may never have known it existed at all, never once seen the wrapper, which somehow makes its disappearance even lonelier than the others on this list. A whole regional childhood, erased without anyone outside that region ever finding out. Number 13. Some products don't get killed by the company that made them. They get killed by an ingredient ban nobody saw coming until it landed. Olestra-based chips, marketed under the name Wow by Frito-Lay in the late 90s, promised guilt-free snacking through a fat substitute the body simply couldn't absorb, which sounded like science fiction at the grocery store checkout line. The catch arrived fast and uncomfortable. Digestive side effects serious enough to require an FDA-mandated warning label. The blunt kind usually reserved for medicine bottles, not snack bags. Sales cratered almost overnight. By the mid-2000s, wow, chips were gone from shelves entirely, and so was Olestra's brief, strange place in the American pantry. A science experiment that lived and died inside a single decade. Number 12. Picture a soup so embedded in American comfort food that its absence from a shelf feels almost structurally wrong, like a missing stair you forget isn't there until you fall through it. The kind of can that sat in the same spot for so long it became part of the kitchen itself. Campbell's quietly discontinued its beef stroganoff variety in 2018, after decades sitting reliably on shelves, citing portfolio simplification, which is corporate language for we ran the math and you lost the vote. Loyalists still post recipe attempts online today, trying to reverse engineer a can that technically no longer exists anywhere, chasing a flavor memory instead of an actual ingredient list, getting close but never quite landing it. Number 11. Here's where the twist sharpens considerably. Some of these foods weren't discontinued for boring sales reasons at all. High-C Ecto Cooler, the ghoulish green drink tied to a Ghostbusters movie promotion, with a cartoon ghost grinning on every box, sold so well it outlived its own film tie-in by over a decade. Then it vanished completely in 2001, only to resurface briefly in 2016, and again in 2017 as a limited nostalgia run that sold out within days both times. The company clearly knows exactly how much hidden demand still exists out there. It brings the product back just long enough to prove that demand, harvest the publicity, then takes it away again. Almost like it's testing how much longing the market can actually hold before breaking. Every revival sells out faster than the last, and every time, the shelf goes quiet again, right after. Number 10. Halfway mark now, and this next disappearance might be the strangest motive on the entire countdown. Banquet's fried chicken TV dinner, a freezer aisle fixture since the 1950s, quietly shrank its chicken portion size 5 separate times between 1990 and 2015. long before the original full-size version got discontinued altogether without comment. Nobody announced the shrinking publicly. Not once. Not in any press release. People just started feeling a little hungrier after dinner most nights, and quietly blamed themselves for it instead of the box. Nobody ever connects shrinkflation to grief, but maybe they should. Number 9. This one disappeared because of a lawsuit nobody expected a snack food to be involved in at all. Original recipe Slim Jims used a beef tallow blend that gave the snack its distinct, almost smoky, slightly old-fashioned bite, the kind you don't taste in modern processed meat snacks anymore. A 2003 trans fat lawsuit targeting processed meat snacks across the industry forced a sweeping reformulation nationwide, swapping tallow for vegetable oil blends almost overnight. The tallow-based recipe quietly died in the resulting paperwork. The name stayed printed on the wrapper exactly as before. The flavor underneath it did not survive the courtroom battle, and nobody ever told the people buying it that something had quietly changed. Number 8. Sometimes a product doesn't get killed outright. It gets quietly quarantined instead, pushed sideways instead of off the shelf entirely. Backaw's Bacon Bits. The imitation bacon topping that flavored a million salad bars across the country, crunchy and red-brown and nothing at all like real bacon but somehow exactly what a salad bar needed, were pulled from several major grocery chains in the early 2000s after consumer groups raised pointed questions about the artificial flavoring process behind them. The product technically still exists somewhere in niche distribution today, tucked into specialty stores. But it's been functionally erased from the mainstream shelf, present on paper, completely absent in practice, a ghost that technically still has a heartbeat somewhere far away. Number 7. We're closing in on the end now, and this next entry might be the most unsettling disappearance on the entire list. Tab, the diet soda that actually predates Diet Coke by over a decade, survived 57 straight years on a loyal, almost cult-like customer base that bought it specifically because nothing else on earth tasted quite like it. Coca-Cola finally discontinued Tab in 2020. Internal statements framed the move as simple portfolio cleanup during the pandemic, nothing more. But longtime Coke employees later admitted something far stranger off the record. Tab had been deliberately kept alive for decades specifically to protect a patent and a flavor formula from competitors, not because of genuine consumer demand at all. The whole time you thought you were drinking a quirky, discontinued curiosity, you were actually drinking corporate strategy in a can. 57 years of loyalty spent protecting a secret instead of serving a customer. Number 6. Here's a detail that recontextualizes nearly everything you've heard so far on this list. Multiple discontinued snack brands we've covered. Surge, Tab, Original Formula, Wow chips share something unsettling in common. Each was quietly used by its parent company as a kind of decoy product, kept around just long enough to study what a small, devoted customer base would tolerate before being pushed toward a flagship brand instead. The data collected from each cancellation didn't disappear with the product. It got filed away, studied, reused on the next launch. Your nostalgia wasn't an accident the company simply regretted later. In several documented cases, it was a controlled experiment with you as the unwitting subject, and the results are still shaping what shows up on shelves today. Number 5. Now the gap gets personal, almost uncomfortably so. A canned vegetable so unglamorous nobody thought to defend it publicly. The kind of can shoved to the back of the pantry behind everything more exciting, until it was nearly gone and people suddenly realized how much they'd quietly relied on it for decades. Veg-All mixed vegetables, a Depression-era pantry staple that fed entire families through hard winters, saw distribution slashed by roughly 60% between 2015 and 2022 as supermarkets favored frozen alternatives instead. It isn't technically fully discontinued yet. It's dying slowly, one regional store at a time, a quiet fade instead of a dramatic headline, the kind of ending nobody throws a goodbye party for. Number 4. This next one might be the cruelest disappearance on the entire list, because almost nobody clocked it happening in real time as it unfolded. Original Hostess Twinkies survived a 2012 bankruptcy, a tense brand sale, and a full media frenzy built around their supposed indestructible immortality, the kind of jokes that made late-night television for weeks straight. But the formula that emerged afterward from that bankruptcy wasn't actually identical to before. Preservative changes, shelf life adjustments, and a quiet switch in manufacturing facilities altered the texture just enough that longtime fans noticed within weeks of the relaunch. The Twinkie will outlive us all myth survived completely intact. The actual 1930 recipe underneath it did not. Buried somewhere in a bankruptcy filing nobody bothered to read closely. Number 3, we're almost at the end now, and this entry connects directly back to something we mentioned earlier. So pay close attention here. Remember the Crystal Pepsi pattern? The product PepsiCo keeps testing and then deliberately killing again? Clearly Canadian, the sparkling juice drink with the literal iceberg printed on the label, followed an almost identical cycle decades apart. Huge 90s popularity fueled by malls and arcades, a quiet 2000s discontinuation nobody fully explained. A surprise 2017 revival that proved overwhelming demand still genuinely existed, then a second disappearance again by 2020, once the hype cooled off. Two completely unrelated companies in two different industries running the same exact playbook, decades apart from each other without ever coordinating. That's not coincidence anymore. That's a strategy with a name nobody outside a boardroom has ever actually heard spoken aloud, a quiet formula for turning absence itself into a marketing tool. Number 2. Here's the gap that might genuinely keep you up tonight thinking about it. A staple so fundamental that its disappearance barely registered as real news, buried under bigger headlines that same week. Original Coca-Cola, the 1985 New Coke disaster, gets remembered today as the company's single biggest mistake ever, a punchline in every marketing textbook since. But almost nobody remembers that the reformulated Coca-Cola Classic, which returned 79 days later, wasn't actually identical to the pre-1985 formula either. Not quite. A key sweetener ratio changed permanently behind the scenes, swapping in a cheaper corn-based syrup that altered the finish on your tongue ever so slightly. The original 1985 taste, the one people genuinely rioted over losing, organized petitions over, called hotlines crying about, never fully came back at all. Everyone celebrated a return that technically never actually happened the way they assumed it had. Number 1. The biggest disappearance on this entire list isn't a single product at all. It's an entire category. Shelf-stable, full-fat, no asterisk grocery food, the kind built decades ago to last without reformulation, without new and improved stickers slapped on later, without quiet ingredient swaps buried in fine print, has been steadily vanishing from American stores since the early 1990s, replaced one small percentage point at a time. It's been replaced gradually by products that look identical from the outside while changing underneath, year after year, can after can, label after label, until the original version exists nowhere except in memory. Most of what you remember from childhood pantries technically still exists somewhere on a shelf, under the same name, in the same packaging. Almost none of it is actually the same thing anymore underneath the packaging, and almost nobody ever tells you when the swap happens. And that leaves one question we haven't answered yet, one that follows you out of this video and into your own kitchen. If the shelf looks unchanged, but the product underneath keeps quietly shifting without announcement, without a label, without a single warning, how many of your own kitchen staples right now have already been swapped out without you ever noticing? Go check your pantry tonight. Read the ingredient list on something you've trusted your whole life without question, and see if it still actually matches what you remember from years ago, back when you weren't paying attention. Tell us in the comments which one of these 20 hit you the hardest, or which discontinued food still haunts your grocery list to this day, years later, long after everyone else stopped thinking about it. This is what we do at Lostways America. Every week we go back, digging up what got quietly buried and asking why nobody noticed it leave in the first place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one we uncover. And if this video took you somewhere you didn't expect to go, hit like, because that's how someone else finds their way back here too.